morning, and thanks a lot. It's actually quite great to be here every year for 8 years now. So, I'm sure none of us expected to go as long, but there was a lot of interest, and we're really happy to have this event. I'll just jump through and give you just a few words on FreeMind. Those of you who don't know us, I doubt it still. And then I'll try to cover some of the information regarding the budgets available and how we see what would be the best way, the best strategy to maximize one's potential to get as much money as possible from this really great source of funding we believe to be a strategic source for the life science market and community. So just really briefly, a few words on FreeMind. We've been around for 13 years now, 35 full-time employees, just about 400 clients, and we work pretty much to do just one thing, try to help our clients get as much money as possible from non-dilutive sources. Mainly NIH and DoD, but it goes into the private foundations, etc. I'll touch upon that briefly later. Work both with the academic world, universities, medical schools, medical centers, but mainly with the industry. Anywhere from very small startups to 3 or 4 individuals and all the way to the very large medical device and pharmaceutical companies. You all know them, I won't be able to mention their names. We submit about 300 applications a year for our clients with a track record that is about 3 to 4 times the average success rate. And we believe, and that'll be my bottom line at the end of the presentation as well, we believe that our success rate is due to 2 steps mainly that we take in helping our clients. First of all, identify all relevant funding opportunities. Make sure they take into account not only the obvious places, but also look into every possible pocket of money that may be of relevance to support their specific projects. And so they can weigh the different alternatives and potential for success and see how they can structure different sources of funding from non-dilutive sources to support their entire portfolio of work. And then the other thing is to present their science in the best possible way, taking into account different aspects. So the presentation to the reviewers is maximized, and you can really do a great job at that, making sure you can get their approval. Overall, we're looking at a really large pocket of money, and that is probably the one thing I want you guys to remember. There's a lot of money out there. It's really competitive. It's very difficult to get to. Success rates are not great. But then again, if you look at any other alternative to fund life science research, for a small company, for a large company, doesn't really matter. I don't think the statistics, the success rates, if you would go about to try and raise money from a VC today, or a public market, or any other means, will be better than going for non-dilutive funding. And if each and every one of you will take a systematic, strategic approach to non-dilutive funding, they'll be able to get to the same result and to maximize their potential. At NIH, of course, there are many different sources of institutes and centers and programs that are designed to support different types of projects and activities, literally from very early stage, exploratory type research even, and all the way to late stage clinical trials, through other HHS organizations like BARDA, FDA, etc. DoD has different programs that are designed to support life science research, and of course there are many private foundations that if any one of you was here last year at our 7th annual conference, non-dilutive funding day, we had a really interesting panel discussion on private foundations. So all of these represent the world that FreeMind lives in, and the world that we try to step into to bring in resources and funding for our clients. Another really important point to remember is that almost, or even every part in the both drug development and device development process could be covered through some kind of non-dilutive funding source, mechanism, or institute. Literally every aspect of it, every step of the way. If you look at this slide, looking at the medical device world, from the product design all the way to the regulatory work that needs to be done, there are different mechanisms, different aspects, and programs that are designed to support each and every part of it. And especially if you look at the drug development process, again, covering each and every part from discovery, very early stage, there are some specific programs and mechanisms available to support that. going through the different stages, preclinical work, animal testing, of course, and then just all the way through to clinical work. Everything can be covered by one type or another of non-dilutive funding. And it's really up to you to do a thorough, systematic, and strategic work to identify all different funding opportunities available to be able to bring in as much money as possible. Part of the way, though, and that's an added value we always are happy to provide our clients, is to be able to plan ahead. And I'll be very honest, most of the small companies aren't really able to put together a 5-year or even a 2-year plan for their research and development. They're not sure exactly how it will work out. One of the first steps you must take is to plan ahead, to know which parts of what you do will come in when. So you can plan into the review process. That does take time. It'll average about a year before you get the funding if you are awarded. So everything needs to be taken into account. Another point that really relates to that has to do with the fact that when you look at the entire process, you need to weigh in both your existing investors. Many clients will have, or many companies will have some investors, be it angels or VCs, etc., pointing their focus into one specific type of their product or their lead product mainly. But then you can use these type of awards to try and help you create a pipeline, robust your organization, and create value to increase the strength of your organization. Looking into the NIH 2012 budget, and of course there is no 2013 budget yet, as it's not approved yet, but it's expected to be pretty much the same. I think the interesting point is to see that only 11% of the $30.9 billion of NIH budget go into the intramural process, their internal research. And the majority of the funding, of the money that they have, does go out to support different research programs and research grants and contracts, etc., that would support companies and, of course, academic research as well. As far as that is concerned, you must keep in mind that a lot of the people have kind of a misperception within industry as to the relevance of different funding sources within NIH, different mechanisms to their research or to their eligibility issue as it goes. Many people view the SBIR to be the only source of funding for companies. This is a huge misperception. The SBIR is a good program, but it's only 2.5% of the entire budget available. And within the SBIR, there are many limitations, both in terms of where money could go or who could get the funding. It's not only for small companies, but for example, virtual companies will not be able to get SBIR money. So everything else beyond SBIR, or almost everything else beyond SBIR, you're eligible to as well. And you must remember that. True, you will have to compete with academics to get the money through an R1 or an R21. But if your science is strong enough, if you can make a good case, bring in your strength and show how you deal with your weaknesses, you will get R1s, you will get R21s, U1s, etc. These funding sources are available, and you could bring them in to support you as well. This is a breakdown of the NIH budget last year, and beyond the red headlines there about cancer and neuroscience and infectious diseases all get billions and billions of dollars. I want you to pay attention to the very first column on the left, and I'm not sure if you can read that, but it rates clinical research. A lot of the people think that NIH does not support clinical work. Well, just take a look at that. They do. I'm not saying every clinical work, every clinical project that you have will be funded necessarily. And of course, that very large column does represent fewer projects compared to the others, because each of those very large clinical projects will need a lot more money. But then again, if you go through the process, if you're able to present your science, if you're able to identify the right opportunity, mainly solicited properly for a large clinical project, you will be able to get funding from NIH as well to support clinical work. This is actually very interesting, and as we were preparing in late December for this presentation, we were surprised to see that. It may not be very clear from this graph that we took out of the NIH website, but last year in 2012, two things that are very, very interesting happened. The first thing, the number of submissions continued to increase. So a lot more people applied submitted applications to NIH. And that actually does make sense if you look at the industry, if you see that there isn't as much money around, etc. But at the same time, both the success rate and the per award dollar amount went up very slightly, but still went up a little bit last year. And that's a very encouraging sign. I think that was not expected when we were last year talking about the 2012 budget, or looking into what could be happening in 2012. And this is definitely very, very encouraging. And this is the SBIR breakdown, and that is even more interesting. If you look at the SBIR graph, the increase in success rates for between 2011, that really was the lowest of the low, into 2012 is quite a significant increase. And again, very, very interesting. I think it is important to mention when we discuss SBIR that, at least from our perspective, I doubt an SBIR phase 1 is worth the trouble if you're not going to go ahead and follow through with a phase 2. The success rates on the phase 2s are significantly higher, and of course the money is a lot, is there. And so just for the $100,000 or $150,000 available for the phase 1, going through about a 6 or 10% success rate to compete for your SBIR phase 1, not worth the trouble if you're not going to go through and follow with a phase 2 to try and get as much money as possible out of this program. Last slide, I think that refers to the NIH statistics. Again, very interesting. While in 2011 we saw both established and first-time researchers submitting to NIH having pretty much the same success rate, almost no difference there. You can see that when all through 2012, there was an increase in the success rate for the established researchers, and I think that is pretty much due to experience, to their knowledge of the system, and to the way they know how to react and respond to program officers and to the system of the NIH. While within industry, especially as you look into non-SBIR type awards, there isn't a lot of experience within industry. I think there are ways to try and bridge this gap and bring in experience, whether through your collaborators within academia, through people like FreeMind, etc., to try and bridge that gap and put yourself in a better position, understanding the system, knowing what to expect and how to present science to these reviewers to maximize your chances. Now this is my favorite slide in the slide deck, and I think this really is the bottom line as far as the industry is concerned. Both in 2010 and 2011, we don't have yet the 2012 numbers. The overall direct investment or awards of NIH and DoD into life science companies, and we did not include in these numbers, the 7.5 billion, does not include companies being subcontractors on academic awards. These are direct funding to companies. NIH and DoD invested or awarded more money than the entire VC community put together. And that is a striking number here, a striking fact. I think, any CEO, any company I know, especially the small ones, when they go about to try and raise money from investors, from VCs, they'll take their time, they'll bring in the best consultants around, they'll put together the best presentation they can, and probably go to every conference, not only to the JP Morgan or Showcase, they'll go to every conference on earth to try and present their science to VCs to try to bring in money for their company. Usually the very same individuals, when looking into non-dilutive funding, representing a significantly higher amount of money available, will take kind of a lottery ticket approach. We'll try once, maybe twice, see if it works, try to come across some funding opportunity that may or may not be of relevance for them, not really do a thorough and systematic process, and obviously they'll fail. If you take a multiple submission process into account, if you're able to take it in the very same serious manner that you will take VC funding, there's no doubt you'll be able to get significant amounts of money out of this huge and great source of funding. But it takes work. It takes a systematic approach. It takes a full understanding of what's available and what could be of relevance for you. And to that extent, being able to bring in funding from these different sources that will support your strategy, rather than try to identify some funding opportunities that will take you away. In this context, one needs to remember that a great majority of the NIH funding is actually non-solicited. So if you just screen through the grants.gov and the solicitations, the BAs, RFAs, RFPs, PAs, etc., this will not give you an accurate presentation of what's available. A lot of money, most of the money in fact, is under unsolicited or investigator-initiated type awards, and one needs to approach program officers, talk to them, see whether this is of relevance and interest to them, your particular project, and to what extent it is, and based on these kind of discussions, you're better in a better position to submit your application and to increase your chances for success. This slide really depicts only the industry-academic partnership, but it's pretty much true for any kind of collaboration that you may have. And every company within the life sciences has great collaborations, and you know, almost every company has its roots in academia. It has maybe some founders still on their advisory board or somewhere else where you're in touch with. Any kind of collaboration with academia or with any other company could be leveraged through different partnership programs or STTRs, or even just as a straightforward R01, could be leveraged to bring in money. When you take a systematic approach into non-dilutive funding, I would list your different collaborators, understand what their strength is, and try to take each and every project that you can identify represented by these collaborations to be submitted as a different application to NIH or to any of the other institutes. So really important to understand the importance of these collaborations and take advantage of them. Just a few words finalizing our NIH part here about the review process. It is important, I think, to remember that the review at the NIH is conducted by external individuals to the organization, that they're not really reachable. You cannot talk to them or discuss things with them on the one hand, but at the same time, it is the importance and weight of the program officers must be acknowledged as well. So when an application is being reviewed, one must take into account the fact that to a great extent this is not a pure scientific discussion. Instead, this is kind of a risk evaluation. They really want to see great science. They really want to see innovative science and projects presented to them, great significance, but you really need to reduce the risk associated with giving money to you or to your project. You need to make sure that you present your strength on the administrative aspects, on your budget, the capabilities of the team, the collaborators, and how you would work through that to be able to maximize your chances. You have to both present your strength from the scientific part, but also reduce the risk associated with it. This is especially true with the very large and complex projects, the 10, 20, 50, $100 million projects that you submit. Don't only ask the scientific question. It's not only about whether your science is great and your researchers can really do wonders in the lab, but it's also about whether they can manage $50 million or $10 million or even $5 million, and that's not an easy question to answer. Many times when researchers, when people write applications, they don't address these administrative parts or lesser parts, if you will, in the same serious manner. An application must come together. It really must represent every aspect: scientific, budgetary, justification to budget, administrative, flow of information, commercialization if it's part of the application. It needs to present a complete package, taking into account every aspect of it for you to be able to win. Take into account you're competing against the best when submitting an application. By all means, I'm sure every research project represent great science, but then again, there are many of those that they will review, and you need to be competitive. I'm just going to briefly say 2 words about BARDA, because obviously we will have Dr. Gary Disbrow at 2:30, and he will be able to he knows a lot more, and will be able to discuss this to a great extent. I think, though, that the place that BARDA takes within the continuum between early stage or discovery and up to the later stages of research and development support is an important place and really needs to be acknowledged. Again, I will let the 2:30 presentation by Gary Disbrow discuss the details of it, but this is a really important program, institute, and a great different BAAs, broad agency announcement available and ready for people who may be of relevance scientifically to be submitted, and definitely needs to be taken into account and seriously. When you look at DoD again, there's some different funding opportunities people would not necessarily associate with DoD necessarily. This is not always military-oriented or battlefield-oriented stuff that they will fund, and you need to investigate, you need to go through the different solicitations, the different BAAs to understand exactly what's available and how to approach them. The process, the review process and submission process is slightly different. I'll discuss that in a bit, but there's money available to support life science research and development within DoD in different places and different programs. One of the important ones, of course, is the CDMRP, and these are just listing some specifics, like the $12 million award for breast cancer program, or prostate cancer program, or ALS research. These would not necessarily be automatically or instinctively associated with the military, but through DoD you can get funding for this, and not many researchers are aware of the fact that such funding sources are available for their programs and projects. BA 13.1, I'm sure many of you are aware of it. Again, it's replacing the 12.1 of last year, and it's a great program focusing on different specific fields of research. They're all listed here, like military infectious diseases, combat casualty care, etc. The process is slightly different when you're approaching these. Usually, an initial pre-application or white paper needs to be submitted, followed by an internal review by the program officers, and then those applications, those proposals that are seen to be of greater value will be asked to submit a full application. DTRA, though, has its own focus with both basic research work that you can definitely get significant funding from, and DARPA is the last one I'll mention here, has a very specific focus. Although DARPA is not only life science oriented, they do support a significant number of life science projects. Their take is slightly different, looking into very innovative projects, high risk, high reward type projects. But again, I think the importance is to bring in all different perspective, all different types of awards and mechanisms that could be of relevance for a specific project to be able to maximize one's potential. And as mentioned earlier, when you go through the DoD submission process, you need to go through a two-stage process, the white paper first and then the full application if invited. You should take into account that going through the white paper is probably harder from a success rate perspective than to get the full application awarded if and when you are invited to submit a full application. So the challenge is really with putting together 2 to 5 pages that will represent fully your project. Many people will kind of look at it as a quick job, just putting together some presentation that they have available, or using some white papers that they have available. This needs to be drafted in a very, very specific way, and at least in our experience, writing 5 pages that really make good sense and present the entire scientific project and budget and plans is probably a lot harder than doing so with 400 pages of the full application. So one needs to invest a lot of time and a lot of thinking into the white paper prior to submission. I think we all know the different private foundations that are available. I'm just listing a few here, but I think what's important to remember as far as non-dilutive funding and the private foundation is that in the past year or so, maybe 2 years, many of them have shifted slightly from the pure non-dilutive place that they're used to being, like NIH, like DoD, HHS, etc. Some of them will ask for matching funds. Some of them will take some IP or royalty as part of their deal, and you need to be aware of that as you approach them. Still, this could be great funding and wonderful sources, but you need to be aware of the different criteria and the different needs that they'll present you with to be able to get funding from them. So just to summarize my part of the day, the way we see it at FreeMind and the work we try to do is focused, and Guy will elaborate on that very soon, is try to take a two-step approach, two core ideas, if you will. The first is to take a strategic approach to non-dilutive funding. You must acknowledge the different institutes' views. You must understand that NIH defines a project in a very different way than a company. A company will see a project as something starting, when they buy some IP and ending when they sell that IP and make profit, hopefully. NIH will look at it very differently. We'll try to cut out a very specific part of it with a very specific scientific starting point and a very specific scientific endpoint. And we'll focus only on that part. And your project, the way a company will define it, will hold many different projects as NIH will define it. So just translating your perspective into what they see and how they view things is really crucial to you being able to submit. You need to recognize a long-term R&D plan and then identify every funding opportunity that will support this R&D plan ahead of time. So you can plan for it. So you can take into account the review process, a 12-month that it will take to get you the funding if you are awarded. You have to pick the right funding opportunity for the particular project. You could take any particular project and try to spin it from, tell the story in different ways. The science will stay the same, but, going for NHLBI, going for NCI, or going for NIDIB with a specific medical device, for example, that could be of relevance to all, will take different stories. If you tell the NIDIB the story, it'll focus on the technology development of the platform of the device itself. If you take the NCI approach, for example, you'll focus on the cancer application of the device. The science may be the same, but the story you will need to tell will be different, and you need to acknowledge that as you write the application, as you prepare yourself for it. And then you need to plan a multiple submission process. It will not be a one-time shot. You will not be able to win. Most people will not win their first application. But if you take a systematic multi-submission approach, you will be able to bring in significant amounts of money. The other part is, of course, how you present your science. You have to know your weaknesses. You have to acknowledge them. Not only tell the story, step one will lead to step two, will lead to step three, etc., but also be able to present your challenge, your weaknesses, the challenges in the science and how you will deal with them, the different alternatives of working through that. You need to find the right partners. Don't just drop names there of great scientists who may or may not be able to submit a letter of intent there, but also be able to bring them in the right way as part of the project and be able to show that your PI can manage all these different individuals. And you have to address the non-important, the administrative parts, the budget in the right way, itemize it in the right way, and justify it in the right way. Going through these different aspects, taking into account the risk assessment process of the review will definitely put your application in a much better position to win. As mentioned, FreeMind has 35 full-time employees, basically broken into two groups, a group of analysts, the guy, our chief analyst, head, and a group of writers and managers. And together we try to address both these aspects for our clients. Guy is our chief analyst. He's been with us for 3 years now? 4 years now. Even better. Really is knowledgeable on different aspects, works with different program officers on a regular basis, reviews dozens of projects, scientific projects in all fields and perspectives all year round, and he's able to present our clients with different funding opportunities.
Basically, just like Ram told you all, I think we can roughly divide our services into two core services. The first one is the strategic assessment process, which you can see here. Of course, the first part of us is really to get to know your company, your needs, where you're coming from, and where you're going to be in 5 years, because most of the grants and contracts are for 5 years. So really, the first step is really to understand your needs. After that, we will generate a list of opportunities, really an initial list of funding opportunities for your needs. And from that moment on, it's a back and forth discussion with the company, with our clients, just in order to see, to find the right fit for the first submission. And again, like Ram said before, to construct a multi-applications strategy in order to really fulfill all you need in terms of funding of your project. If needed, we can also help you in putting one-pagers if needed, just in order to really define the project, because what you define as a project is not necessarily what agencies will define as projects. You know, developing a drug is not a project. Okay, that's the whole concept of the company, etc. So, and the next stage will be really to have the strategic plan. So that's the first core service that we have. After we have identified a specific solicitation, we have defined specific aims for that solicitation, we move on to the second service that we have, the second core service, and that's actually developing the application. We will assign you with one of our grant consultants, or have an amazing experience with writing application and consulting on application and developing the application, and they will guide you through the process. Okay, we will develop the initial templates and drafts for the company based on any material that you will provide us, and after that it's a back and forth process. Okay, and as many drafts that we will have, that will enable us to have an airtight application with a good scientific story, with good budget, and that of course leads us to another section that we have in the application. The scientific story is not the only thing that we have to tell. We also have to tell the budget and the environment, because the review criteria for different agencies is not only the scientific one. So we really have to have a good application. So that's basically the two core services that we have in FreeMind at the professional department. Now, as you all know, we're going to have a roundtable discussion, so I want to give you some appetizers for what we're going to discuss later on. But of course, it's an open discussion, and if you want to discuss whatever it is, I'm open. So let's start with the cancer environment, the oncology environment. So the R01, R21, SBIR, we all know, are all familiar with that. I would like to introduce you with the IMED program. That's really the high-risk, high-reward type of research funded by the NCI for technology, for medical devices, both for academics in order to develop new tools for research, but also for treating patients with the different cancers that can be found. Usually a two-stage type of research, beginning with R21, that's the high-risk, high-reward. After you complete the R21, you can also submit an R33, the equivalent of phase 2 application with the SBIR to some extent. Like Ram said before, the CDMRP, also a really good pocket of money for oncology research. DoD supports research in breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and prostate cancer. Many programs starting from really the early stage research all the way to clinical trials. And Ram mentioned before the $12 million clinical trial contract with the CDMRP for breast cancer. The next issue is, of course, infectious diseases. The first question that we always ask, are you dealing with a biodefense pathogen or not? If yes, if the answer would be yes, so you should follow and submit an application to NIH, BARDA, DITRA, or DARPA. If the answer is no, again, NIH is always a good possibility, and also the US Army as well, because the difference between the US Army and DITRA is the US Army will not deal with biodefense, and DITRA will deal with biodefense pathogens. DITRA will support from early stage all the way to clinical trials, usually utilizing the contract mechanism and not a grant mechanism. BARDA, I guess we will hear all about it later on today. DARPA, the equivalent of Q from James Bond, if you remember. Really crazy science, just as long as you can justify it. 1% of success maybe in the near future or the far future. Really just think about Q. That's, well, if you have science equivalent to Q, so you should go ahead and submit to DARPA. And NIH from basic science, really from discovery all the way to clinical trials. Medical devices, the past few years, the new buzzwords about medical devices will be utilizing all sorts of nanotechnology assets that the company may have in order to construct a new medical device for diagnostic and for treatment. So the bioengineering, the NIBIB issued a list of funding opportunities in that environment. I have here one example, that's the Bioengineering Nanotechnology Initiative, great amount of money. But of course, if you're not dealing with nanotechnology, you can always apply for an R01 or R21 and other SBIRs. And of course, each institute also has specific funding opportunities for medical devices, just a matter of, find the right match for you. And neurological disorders, The NIH and DoD both support neurological disorders. The NIH will support Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, ADHD, PTSD, developmental disorders, and stroke, etc., and all other neurological disorders. The DoD will fund research that relates to the family of the soldier and the VA. So we are talking about the veteran as well. So we are talking about PTSD, ADHD, autism, and TBI, of course. Again, another example, the NIA, that's the National Aging Institute, or the National Institute for Aging, has put a lot of emphasis on Alzheimer's research. Next week we're going to have 3 big solicitations due to support Alzheimer's disease, beginning from early stage all the way to phase 2 clinical trials. But this is another example for the U01 application. This is an ongoing solicitation with 3 deadlines per year to support Alzheimer's research. But then again, if you take a closer look, you'll see that it's $1 million per year, not the usual $500,000 per year indirect cost. So this is a big application, 3 cycles every